What if the way you teach and care for young children could change the world? Welcome to Reimagine Childhood, brought to you by the Early Childhood Christian Network, helping you grow as an educator, leader, and follower of Jesus. Early childhood is a sacred season where hearts are shaped, faith begins to grow, and lifelong learning takes root. We believe teaching young children is more than a job. It's a calling. That's why each episode is filled with practical strategies, real stories, and faith-based encouragement to help you create joyful, meaningful learning experiences in your classroom and beyond. Let's reimagine what's possible in early childhood together. I'm your host, Monica Healer, and I'm so glad you're here. Today on the podcast, we're talking about play-based learning with a new friend, Kris Ramos. Kris spent 13 years in public education as a teacher, instructional coach, and eventually an assistant principal of an elementary school. She landed in a church-based preschool program as a threes classroom teacher. Listen in as we talk about how God has designed young children to learn and develop. Kris, welcome to the podcast today. I'm so happy to have you.
Thanks. I'm happy to be here.
We get to talk about play-based learning today, and I'm excited about that. I am a huge proponent of young children being able to play as long as possible. I feel like we're forcing young babies to sit in a chair well before they are really ready to do that. So I would love to hear from you. What first sparked your passion for play-based learning? I know you are a huge advocate too. So talk to us about that.
It's funny. I accidentally stumbled into an entire early childhood education career. I had started my career teaching first, second, and third grade, and then went on to become an instructional specialist and was an assistant principal in a very large school district with a very high risk population of students. As a young teacher teaching first grade, I felt an incongruence in my heart. I knew that what we were doing in the classroom, curriculum-wise and instructional-wise, didn't align with the way kids learn. I knew there was an incongruence, that things didn't match up, but I wasn't really aware of exactly what that was. So I pursued a master's degree in educational leadership, thinking surely if I climbed the ladder a little bit, I could help advocate more, and really just found myself mired in middle management. And at the same time, I had a 3-year-old and a 5-year-old. And so working the hours I was an assistant principal didn't really work out. So I was going to quit my job and be a stay-at-home mom for a few years. And that lasted about a week because I realized I don't like cleaning my own house at all. I hate it. I just need to make enough to be a housekeeper. One of my friends said, you should go teach at the preschool at the church. And it had never occurred to me to work with young children. I thought, oh, that's not my wheelhouse. But I thought about it and jumped in, and I started teaching threes days a week. I stressed before the school year started. I studied as much as I could about 3-year-olds, but being in a room full of them is being in a pen full of wild animals. They're very unpredictable. You don't really know until you get in there what's going to happen. And I got in there, and I was so fortunate because in this program, we had incredible mentors who had been doing this for years. I had a director who was focused and committed to supporting developmentally based practices and play-based learning. I went home at the end of that first week, and I told my husband, this is the most authentic teaching I've ever done in my whole life. This is teaching. This is really what it's all about. From that moment on, I was a goner. I was sold. I taught in the classroom for several years. I did everything from chapel to motor skills, became the assistant director, and then eventually became the director. Now I'm passionate about advocating for my teachers, advocating for play-based instruction in our classrooms, and helping our teachers continue to provide that amidst the obstacles.
Talk to us a little bit, maybe define play-based learning. What does it look like in a classroom?
So I always tell our parents when I give a tour of our program that our hope is that every child from ages 6 months to 5 years, that at the end of the day, when they go home and their parents say, what did you do at school today? Our goal is that they would say that they played. To a casual observer, it looks like a room full of children doing whatever kind of play they might want. The real work of the teacher is behind the scenes in selecting materials and planning provocations and activities and pre-planning interactions for children to engage in throughout the classroom.
Yeah.
And then participating with the children in the instruction based on what the children are doing. So scaffolding as necessary, questioning, supporting, encouraging the children as they play.
I love it. Talk to me about why you think play is so essential for young children.
There are so many reasons. First of all, it's the way God made young children to learn best. And there's tons of research to support this. Play is like fertilizer for the brain. It changes the chemistry in the brain to help the brain absorb and learn new information. Amanda Morgan says about play, it's defined by children having joy and agency. And that joy lights up parts of the brain that help the brain to learn better. When children learn through play, it develops a love of learning. It's the same effect as when we see children who are read to as young children on their parents' laps. Reading becomes associated with good feelings, with warmth, with comfort, with safety. And learning in a play-based environment does that same thing. It develops a love of learning. It feeds that curiosity that makes children inherently lifelong learners.
I love that you said fertilizer for the brain. That to me is fantastic terminology.
Yes.
Children and Amanda, listen, we're big fans of Amanda Morgan at ECCN too. So the fact that she says play involves joy and agency in young children, that to me is what an early childhood classroom should always include. If it's not joyful, then we're doing something wrong. And if children don't have choice, if they don't have agency over what they actually want to do, and here, listen, we're also not saying you let the zoo go wild, but children should have a choice in what they want to do and how long they want to do it. When we do that, learning is natural. It doesn't have to be forced. It just happens. For many of us, I think that feels like, are we even doing our job? The reality is, yes, absolutely. The teachers have to prepare in the background, provocations, which I love that term too. When you think about provocations, a lot of times we think provoked is like, you made me do it. That's what we're meant to do with play, provoking them to have fun because we've planned in advance to do that. So when you talk about children learning through play, they really do become sponges. When we provide opportunities, provoke them to have fun in intentional ways. We're not just dumping toys out in a room and saying, we're intentional in what we're planning. We know where we want this lesson or where we want this day to go. And yet we're flexible in how we have conversations and how we observe their interactions with each other throughout the day. That's real play-based learning, which we get fired up about that all day.
And the other part that goes with that, and the research that is just not coming out about this, I just heard about it last year from, I think it was the team from Rice, about developmental cascades. Young children, I guess older children grow and learn in a similar progression, right? Like most 8-year-olds are developmentally ready to learn the same lesson. Right. But young children are not like that. Young children grow cognitively, emotionally, and physically in fits and spurts. And we know that physically this is true because for years it's been the mystery of parenthood. Why did my kids' shoes fit yesterday, but they don't today? We know about growing pains. We know that physically a kid can grow almost an inch overnight. Yeah. And it is the same way with their cognitive development. I like to give the example. You wouldn't look at your neighbor's child who was reading and point to your child who's not and say, let's talk about height. If your neighbor's child was taller than yours and your child hadn't had a growth spurt, you wouldn't point at your child and said, why aren't you 6 foot tall yet? You just be like, that's either not where you're going with this or you haven't hit that spurt. The young children, we see that they grow in fits and spurts in different areas. One child may be very physically advanced and is gross motor all over the place. He's throwing and catching balls. He's the Michael Jordan on the playground. Whereas another child is still struggling with skipping and running and galloping and those kinds of things. But yet in the classroom, the child whose physical development may be lacking, may be reading. And so if you really tried to develop one lesson that was going to be applicable to every single child in your class, it's an impossible task.
Oh, absolutely.
So you're not going to meet anybody. Learning through play gives everyone the opportunity to grow where they are ready to grow. It gives the teacher the opportunity to have those individual interactions to support that learning.
That's so good. I had not heard the terminology developmental cascade, so I need to dig into that a little.
I lost my mind when I heard about it. I've been talking about it for years, but I didn't have the language. I didn't know that it was being studied or researched. And I think it was the team from Rice that talked about it at Tacey last year.
That is fascinating. I'm definitely digging into that. You can see the play happening, but I don't always have the academic or scholarly language to go with it. And when you and I talked before this podcast, you have seen teachers, and you were one of them. Intuitively, you know what children need. And somehow we have to be able to defend it, because the push has been for the last couple of decades. Kids need to be ready for kindergarten. We need to prepare them for kindergarten or for elementary school or whatever. And it seems to be that there is an academic push, like being ready for kindergarten means they need a worksheet that proves they can write letters or numbers. It seems we've created preschool has become a mini elementary school rather than preschool.
And that's one of my favorite things to talk about when it comes to play-based learning, because Amanda Morgan gave the very first keynote I ever heard her give was called Developmentally Appropriate Practice, or why we don't push kids down the stairs. If your child was not learning how to walk down the stairs fast enough, you wouldn't try to enhance that by pushing them or taking their arm and dragging them. The early years are really about whole child development. All of these parts of growth and development are interconnected and have to grow and develop together. Play-based learning promotes the development of soft skills.
Yes.
Every kindergarten teacher I know will tell you, I can teach a child their ABCs and their 1, 2, 3s. What would really be a blessing is if kids could come to school knowing how to ask for help, open their lunchbox, understand the culture of a classroom, communicate with a peer, share, those kinds of things. And so those kinds of skills are necessary to develop through play. You don't learn those by sitting in a circle and saying, this is the way we share.
Exactly.
Lisa Murphy, in one of her keynotes, says, what good is it if your child can read when they're 3 if they can't get their shovel back on the playground or communicate with their teacher that they need to go to the bathroom? Those kinds of skills need to be developed as well. One of our core values at our program is that we are a place where children are free to act their age. We believe that our job is to support every child at the stage of development that they're currently in. If children are given an environment, support, encouragement, and opportunity to develop the skills that a 3-year-old needs, they will be ready. The skills that a 4-year-old needs. If they continue to learn those skills, they'll be ready to learn the skills taught in kindergarten.
Yeah. I think that's so true. As a society, I feel like we've pushed kids to be older than they are. And so we get upset when an 18-month-old bites. That's what they know. And so our job in early childhood really is we support them in the area of development where they are, and then we teach them what's socially appropriate, right? Nobody is born knowing what's socially appropriate. We all learn.
I said that so many times.
We all just learn through experience. I love that that's the mantra of your program, really, is this is our core value. Kids allowed to act their age. And that, again, it doesn't mean we allow an 18-year-old to continue biting, but we recognize that's a normal behavior. Not something we need to freak out over. We recognize that a 3-year-old probably won't be writing and reading.
Yeah.
But they're probably going to struggle sharing still. We're going to practice taking turns and play. It's like you said, sitting in a circle, talking about sharing does not teach sharing.
It's a tale as old as time in education. Tell me and I forget. Show me, I might remember, but involve me, let me practice, give me hands-on and I'll understand. That's the heart of play-based teaching, is every part of the curriculum. When they have that opportunity to be hands-on, they'll understand. One of my favorite examples of something play-based in our classrooms is that one of my teachers every year at Christmas would put out the string of Christmas lights that were put up and the 9-volt batteries. She would just set them on the science table on a tray and not say anything. The children would go over and interact with the lights and the batteries. And in every class, you've got that one little junior scientist. By the end of the first 10 minutes of class, one of them figures out. And so then you have 3-year-olds at the end of the day going home telling their parents, yes, they played at school, but we also learned what a circuit is. And they might not use the word circuit all the time, but they will know that they use the battery to light the Christmas lights. Learning creates hooks in the brain so that then when they are in elementary school and they start learning about electrical circuits, they have that hook, that schema to put that on.
I love that so much. Talk to me about some of the misconceptions people have about play-based learning.
Teachers aren't just sitting back watching, and that's certainly not the case at all. One of my favorite aspects of play-based learning is the authenticity of our assessment. We use ongoing formative assessment in our classrooms. The teachers are always observing, taking notes, and collecting data. They're collecting artwork, dictation, writing samples. They're all the time collecting this information, photographs of what the kids are doing. The kids love it. They love when the teachers will take pictures of their block creations, because you can't take home your block creation. They get so excited. All of that data collection, and then the teachers can use that to see if children are meeting those developmental milestones typical for their age. They're able to share that information with the parents about how they're developing, what areas they seem to be excelling in, and what areas they're still working on. I think our parents are always surprised when we have our parent conferences and the teacher can say, these are the things your child is proficient at, and these are the things they are continuing to grow in. And this is how we're supporting them in the classroom with that. I always love to give the example of cutting with scissors. It's a process, and you start with the ripping and snipping. I can tell when I walk into a classroom that the teachers have paid attention to how the children are doing with holding the scissors and where they're at, because some kids are still ripping and snipping and tearing up, and the other kids, they've got the scissors out. And so that it's really about the teachers being responsive to the individual needs, scaffolding their learning as they go, helping them learn more about the things that they're curious about. I love feeding kids curiosity and their natural learning. I had a teacher the other day who came in with a giant container of quarters, and I was like, what you got? And she said that one of her kiddos was passionate about the different quarters and the different states' quarters. She brought in her quarters and they were going to sort them. And the other kids were like, oh, they're all different. They were all learning about the quarters. In a play-based program, you can really encourage those kinds of interests that the kids have.
Yeah. So the other teachers are not just sitting around.
They're not just sitting around. And then the other misconception is that they aren't learning academics, that they're not learning cognitive skills. And when the teachers share their assessments with the parents about what the children have learned in the classroom and what the parents tell us, the parent feedback is amazing. At the end of the first week of school, they're like, oh my gosh, I can't believe how much she's already learned. Because they go home talking about all the things they're learning in class.
I love it.
Let's pause this amazing conversation for just a minute so I can share something fun. First, you know you have to get training hours every year. Or maybe you're like me and you're a lifelong learner and you actually love training. You prefer to bounce ideas off of other people who do what you do rather than just listening to a lecture. You'd love to hear from a real live trainer who's passionate about what they teach. And you want affordable training. And you want it all from a biblical perspective. Well, we have the answer at Early Childhood Christian Network. Join us at one of our regional conferences throughout the state of Texas. 6 hours of in-person training, DONE, done for you in one Saturday. As low as $80 per person, and that includes lunch, y'all. High quality, engaging presenters who train from a biblical perspective. We're coming to a city near you. Tyler, Lubbock, Bryan College Station, Houston, and San Antonio in this season. Go to earlychildhoodchristiannetwork.com and click on events for all the details. While we love connecting with you on this podcast, it would be even better to connect with you in person soon.
Talk to me about how you've seen teachers struggle in defending play to parents.
Oh, this is a real tough one, because I think every teacher at some point realizes if you're going to an old school, top down, I give the information and you just absorb it setting, knows that feels like a struggle. But we don't always have the research and the academia behind it to know why. My teachers and I have spent the last couple of years diving into Amanda Morgan's program, Powerful Play Foundation. That has been wonderful and really gets into the research and what experts have to say about play-based learning. But then I think one of the most meaningful exercises that we've done, as soon as I became director, I came up with my why statement. Why do we do what we do? We do have our core values, but I needed my personal why statement for our philosophy, our curriculum, our approach. Research has consistently proven play is the way God made young children to learn best. And what we did with our staff is we had everyone, as we were going through the Amanda Morgan activities, write their own why statement.
That's great.
I try to remind them to reflect back on what did you say is your why and how do you see that playing out in your classroom on a regular basis, to reaffirm that and to help them grow and continue to be reflective. Because every teacher you have to have your why. You have to know why you value it so that you can advocate for it with others. When your heart is the right thing, you can see when you look at the kids doing it. And so I think it's important not to have to reinvent the wheel every time somebody asks you, but to have that core statement that summarizes your beliefs.
I think it's important for teachers to understand what development is happening through play.
Yes.
When a child might go home and say, what did you do today? Oh, I played today. For a lot of parents, they're like, wait a minute, I'm paying for you to be ready for kindergarten. I'm not paying for you to just play. For us as educators to be able to say, hey, actually, when they were digging in that sandbox today, here's what they were learning. They were doing heavy work by digging down deep. So we're building foundational skills, upper body strength that eventually will lead to pre-writing and writing skills. We're also building fine motor skills because as they're digging down in their sand, they're finding whatever we buried in there for them to find today because we were intentional in that. So we're building fine motor skills as they're moving sand out of the way. For an educator to be able to say that to a parent, yes, this looks like fun and play because they're digging in a sandbox. It does look fun, and it is. This is what we're intentionally wanting them. This is our goal for them to learn by providing this fun, playful activity.
One of the things that's
so important for educators to learn, right? You need to be able to see any activity that you're providing for your students. What are they learning? What is developing through the skill? Are they developing communication language skills? Are they developing social emotional skills? Are they developing motor skills, gross or fine? What is it that they're developing as educators? If we can communicate that, all of a sudden this playful, oh, wait a minute.
Right.
They're playing and having fun. But the skill development is huge in every activity.
One of the things that we've done that has been huge is for open house and meet the teacher and activities like that where we get parents in the classroom. We have posters made for all of the different centers that say, when I am at blocks, I am learning. And
I love that.
Another thing that I really like, sometimes people read stuff, sometimes they don't. Maybe one day it'll be on the floorboard of their car and they'll be like, oh, what's this? They'll be bored waiting in the car pickup line for their big kid and they'll read it. Amanda Morgan puts out these newsletters that you can purchase on her website.
I only have a discounted link to her letters on our site. I'll link those in the show notes.
So we always put the Why We Play letters on the back of our school newsletter.
I love that.
I will communicate play as much as possible. I try also to use our social media to post pictures and videos of what the kids are doing during the school day and then to tie that into the objectives.
Great idea. I think this was a shift for me when I first came into early education. I was coming in as a teacher, and teacher to me meant I was instructing students. It took a year or so for me. I had a great mentor who taught next door to me, and I would watch her classroom and be like, okay, first of all, she's having fewer behavior problems than I am. Her kids look like they're having way more fun than my kids are having. How is this going on? Because I would step in that room and it felt somewhat chaotic to me. But then she started sharing with me, hey, this is what they're doing. When I put these activities out, this is what they're actually learning. And then all of a sudden it didn't feel chaotic anymore because I could see the intention that she put into every activity. So she had more stuff available for them to do, more centers open than I had. She didn't make them rotate through the centers every 15 minutes like I was because that felt like classroom management to me. But it caused a lot of behavior challenges because kids weren't ready to move yet. They didn't want to leave the block center yet because they weren't quite done. And to reframe for my own self in my own growth journey, I had to see it done differently.
Yeah.
In order to say, oh, wait a minute, there's a different way to do this. And those kids are actually learning more than my kids.
I was an assistant principal the year that our school district went from half day to full day pre-K. Half of our office referrals were kindergartners after lunch.
Shocking.
I learned a lot about how kids behave when they have to sit still too long. When I first started teaching threes, there were parts of the day that I dreaded. I realized I dreaded my circle time because I was doing what I thought everybody did. I thought you had to do this story and do this days of the week song, and you had to do the same things every day. I quickly realized that if I was bored, the children were bored. And bored kids misbehave. They look for something better to do, and who can blame them? We do the same thing.
They're looking for something fun, and you're not fun.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. And so I think giving kids the opportunity to be hands-on, to be moving, to be involved, to have agency in their play and activities throughout the day does decrease the amount of misbehavior and problems that you see in the classroom. The opportunity to practice things authentically as far as soft skills like problem solving, taking turns and sharing, practicing that in an authentic way. They also learn from each other. It's so cute to hear them mimic one another when they're practicing their manners or how to say please and thank you. And it's a lot more fun, for sure.
Give us some practical steps for the teacher who is in that teacher-led world where everything has to be teacher curated and controlled. What's a first step for moving toward a more play-based classroom?
So I would say my first suggestion is usually to start small. Don't overwhelm yourself, but just I open up a little bit of your classroom at a time and give everybody that agency to move throughout those centers. And I think it can be a little terrifying at first. I remember the part of my soul that was very confused the first time kids wanted to take the blocks to the kitchen, to the dramatic play area. I just sat there for a long time thinking, I'm not sure how I feel about. Yeah. And it was a little bit more work on me in the beginning to train the children how to put the blocks back in the correct center at the end. But it was so cool to see them use the blocks to represent different things, so the puzzle pieces and the purses and things like that. But they had intention behind their play, the development of the imagination, of pretending this is something else. To start small and to say yes when you can. I think so often, just as adults in a world with children, our default is no or not right now. But sometimes you can say yes. Sometimes children are working at the art table and they've got some glue and paper and paint, and then they really need glitter all of a sudden. Just say yes every now and then and see what else. Or try to step back if they mix the colors of the Play-Doh. See what happens. Just sit back a little bit more and not worry so much about control. It'll be okay.
That's what I say. I think if you allow some things to happen, try to say yes as much as you can, step back for a minute and watch instead of interacting. Watch the play. Kids are learning. Pause long enough to say, hey, these kids are playing in the block center and they're building this tower. And our theme this week is community helpers. Okay, so I put fire trucks in the block center, but they're not really playing with the fire trucks. Instead, they're building this big tower and they're talking about a castle. What if you just let that happen? Are they still learning language skills? Yes. Are they still learning problem solving and sharing the blocks? Yes. So it's not theme-based necessarily, but they're still learning the skills you intend them to learn. And sometimes it just takes us as an adult to step back and go, wait, why am I hesitant about this? And also sometimes even, why does this feel out of control to me when it's actually not?
And I think it's so fun to see what happens. That's really where the magic happens. When the kids start to take things just one step beyond what we had planned. We're nowhere near doing a train unit. Nobody in our program has a train unit per se, but there's always one day that this one class decides that there's a train. So every chair is rearranged and a teacher has to move a table to make room for more chairs. And it's just so exciting to see what they come up with. I know that it's exciting because teachers can't wait to come to me at the end of the day and say, oh my gosh, you wouldn't believe what they did today. You wouldn't believe this idea they had. Or they come to me and say, okay, we want to do this, but we need this. Can we buy it? Can we have it? And I'm like, yeah, let's go for it as much as I can.
As the leader, you have to create a yes environment that said, this is benefiting children. Let's figure out how to make it happen, or come up with a creative way to make it happen.
You know, and I think supporting teachers to take risks. We all grow through risk, understanding that sometimes teachers will try things and it won't work. Be like, okay, how did you feel about how that went? You didn't think it went well? Throw that way out. Let's move on to the next one. Encourage them to try new things. My teachers have a lot of leeway because I always say that the things they dream up and the activities, the classrooms they created are far beyond anything one person can imagine.
Absolutely.
And so we have this infinite database of creativity because each teacher has the opportunity to create their own learning environment, and then they learn from one another and take the best ideas from each other. That's really made for an enjoyable place to be.
Yeah. Something else you said when you first started teaching threes, you got bored in your circle time. And then just now when you described your teachers coming to you at the end of the day, it was not for them to say, you won't believe what this kid did today.
That's a good thing.
Right? Like we have the teachers that come to us and go, you won't believe what happened in my classroom today. And they're telling you the misbehavior that happened.
Right.
To have teachers that come to you at the end of the day and they are excited to share the learning, the discovery, the exploration, your classroom can be as much fun for you as it is for the kids when you switch more toward authentic play with young children. When you get to be a part of that authentic discovery and exploration in young children, in my mind, there's nothing like it. This is why we stay in early childhood, because we get to be a part of that constant new learning, that constant light bulb moment. There's not a day that goes by in early childhood where there's not a light bulb moment for somebody.
Right. It's like watching magic.
That's not calculus. I promise you. High school calculus teachers do not think that way. We get to do that in early childhood. That to me, and why I stay in early childhood, because I think it's the most amazing place that we could ever be educators.
Yes. You can almost see the brain development happening. And right now I'm in the middle of reading a book. It's by Dr. Amen, who does the neuroscience stuff, but it's co-written with one of the creators of Teaching with Love and Logic, Parenting with Love and Logic. This book is amazing, but it's fun because everything that we do in a play-based classroom ties to good, healthy brain development. Also mental wellness and mental health. And I think that's important to point out right now in society. More people are saying that there are more children who struggle with mental illness than don't. Advocating for play-based programs that are healthy for the brain and healthy for our wellness, children's wellness. I just think it's a critical piece of supporting children's development.
Absolutely. I think everywhere you look, reports of younger and younger children being diagnosed with anxiety and depressive disorders. That should concern us. And I love what you said, that we have a way to help children to be well, to have healthy brain development. And in the process, us being in those environments as adults also improves our own mental well-being.
100%.
Yeah.
We all have days when we feel funky, right? When we're grumpy and we don't quite feel ourselves or whatever.
Yep.
Every day when I go to work, I feel better afterwards than I did before I got there. And very few people can say that about their jobs.
I used to, when I was in school, on those days where I was having a rough day, I would go stand at the end of the hallway and just listen to kids laugh. Because there's something about being in an environment where there's authentic joy that changes your own inner well-being. As a leader, when I'd had a rough meeting with church leadership or even a parent or staff, to go down the hallway or be in a classroom that was having a really good time was wonderful. And so in the job I have now, I work from my house, so there's not a place for me to go where there are children. But I have a great relationship with one of the local schools. I will go and hang out in their outdoor classroom. Like I go sign in as a visitor and hang out in their outdoor classroom and just watch children play outside. That has been mentally and emotionally healing in a way that I couldn't even describe. What a privilege for us as teachers. You're there to keep the kids alive too. Let's be serious. We got to make sure that nobody is getting hurt. But to be able to be in that environment, to just step back for a minute and enjoy children, enjoy the environment that you've created for them to thrive. There's something unique about that I'm so grateful the Lord would put us in those locations.
Yes. And I don't know how you could, I say this all the time, like, this is proof that there's God.
Oh, absolutely.
Like watching these children learn and grow. I love our program. Some of our kids start as young as 6 months. So to see them come through our program and then leave our program at 5 years old is just amazing. And I recently shared basic brain development facts with our church council. I'm all the time advocating for support from different populations, right? And the church congregation is always an important demographic that you want to have support from. And the facts about early childhood brain development, about how 90% of brain development happens before kids turn 3. We have such an opportunity. God is at work and we're able to really make the most of that time.
Listen, I feel like we could talk another hour. Our time is about up. So I got to ask you our last question. Our podcast is called Reimagine Childhood. And I would love to hear from you. If there was one thing you could reimagine about our current approach to early childhood, what would that be?
There was more value placed on children's development during this stage of life.
No.
Parents, by legislators, by educators, by everyone in our culture, because I feel like public education is playing catch up.
Yeah.
It has such a panicked feel to it that we're trying so hard to learn so much so fast. I feel like it's because we've written off these first few years as the cute years. They can stay at home and private preschool is a luxury, and that there's daycare. We don't pay well enough in daycare to have the benefits and the things that people need to make a living wage, to hire people who are trained and invested in it as a career. I just wish that this phase of childhood, this phase of development was valued.
Kris, thanks for spending some time with us today, sharing your heart and passion for early childhood. It's obvious why God has put you in a position of leadership and advocating. Like you're making a difference.
Thank you.
This was such a fun conversation for me. Kris is well-researched and passionate about play-based learning. I loved when she says play is fertilizer for the brain. Think about that for a minute. The brain is growing and developing all the time, from birth to death. It's always developing in some way. But when you add joy and agency to any environment, that's like spreading fertilizer on your lawn. You're adding in the nutrients that make brain development stronger and more stable. And then at the end of our conversation, when we turn toward personal wellness, all of us could use a little more joy in our lives. What a gift that we get to do that in our early childhood classrooms. I'm going to challenge you to stop for a moment this week and just observe the craziness in your classroom. Observe the activities in your classroom. Are children laughing? Enjoying themselves as they discover and explore new things? Allow that laughter, that discovery, that excitement to fill up your own heart and your own soul for just a moment. Take a breath. Thank God for His goodness to put you in a classroom with young children whose brains are rapidly growing and expanding. He trusts you with that responsibility. What a privilege and an honor to be a joy creator for young children. We'll link to some of the Amanda Morgan resources that Kris mentioned in the show notes. You can also find Kris on Instagram at _inspired_llama. That's the inspired llama, but underscores in between the words. If you want to connect with Kris online, she also has a website, theinspiredllama.com. You may want to definitely click through our show notes to get those links, because especially that Instagram link, there is another account called The Inspired Llama that is not Kris. So make sure you click on our show notes, find all the resources for today's episode. And again, thank you for being a brain builder. What you do in the classroom matters. It matters a lot. Stop for a minute and enjoy it this week. Fill yourself with the joy of being in that classroom. Thanks for joining us. Thanks for spending time with us today on Reimagine Childhood. We hope you walk away with a fresh idea, a little encouragement, and a big reminder that your work with young children truly changes lives. If this episode was helpful, would you take a moment to subscribe, rate the show in whichever app you listen, and then share this episode with someone who might benefit? Your engagement helps us reach more teachers and caregivers who are shaping the next generation for Jesus. Stay connected with us on Instagram, Facebook, or YouTube, and our website at earlychildhoodchristiannetwork.com. Until next time, keep nurturing wonder, faith, and joy in the children God has placed in your care.